Francis here from E-MTB Review, and I haven't published a video in a while. I'm sorry about that. I got distracted by a little epic adventure. I climbed 10,000 feet on one of these bikes, these non-assisted bikes, and I learned 5 things about it, and I'm going to explain to you guys why I did it. So walk with me, and if you hang on till the end, I'll tell you about a channel update, what the year has been for me, and what it's gonna look like in January and looking forward into the future. Okay, my little distraction is we have a cool forest here, legal for analog bikes and a lot of single track. It's called the SoCal Demonstration Forest. It's world famous, and a friend asked me, hey, how come you don't do the 10,000 foot climb anymore? Like 8 laps in the forest. And I said, I've been busy and I'm old and I'm e-biking. But I think I'm kind of in the best shape of my life. It's kind of weird, you know, just riding a lot of these e-bikes because I ride a lot more. But there's no way to really understand or no way to prove it. So I said like, hey, and also I'm getting older, 58 years old now. The last time I did this 10,000 feet thing was 12 years ago. So I said, boom, let's do it. It's December, short days, kind of cold, no time to train. Let's just do it. You know, use our existing training, just prepare a little bit and see what we can do. So I learned 5 things about it. Really cool. And you know, 10,000 feet is a big feat, and they say, hey, most of the people I meet who are afraid of e-bikes say, hey, I still want to work out. You know, I still want to make an effort. You know, I can still do it under my own power. But to me, e-bike is fun, learning, and progression, and hanging out with people that you wouldn't otherwise be riding with, either faster than you or slower than you. But there is a missing element of e-biking, which is the pain and suffering, the failure and the achievement are all not quite as pronounced in the e-bike world as in the analog world. Meaning you don't really suffer that much, or you don't really fail because it's not required. You know, you don't turn around on a mountain because you can't do it. You'll be able to do it with one of these things. Descending is another story, but climbing, it can climb pretty much anything that any human can do on an analog bike. So because of that, it's hard to celebrate wins. You know, it's hard to say, hey, I climbed this thing in 20 minutes, or I did 5,000 feet, because you know, nobody understands the assist. You know, you're just in it for the fun, for the experience, but celebrating goals and achievements, you know, climbing Half Dome or something like that, it's not synonymous with the e-bike, or a marathon or a triathlon, so to speak. So that type 2 kind of adventure is more found in this area. And I know a lot of you guys miss it and are afraid of missing it. And so why I advise the people who are kind of like that is have 2 bikes. You know, have one of these in the stable. In summary, I did it. I made a call out on Facebook and Emtbr, and lo and behold, like 80 to 100 people showed up. Kind of what showed up 12 years ago. So XC is not dead in this world. There's so many people out there. And what's really cool for me is I was able to reconnect with so many of my old friends. Like, oh, yeah. You know, and that's one of the things missing on e-bike as well, is if you're so focused on this, some of your friends, 50 or 75% of them, are just you doing this stuff. You know, you won't ride with them anymore. It's kind of difficult. So it's good to play in both, not only to get the both type 1, type 2 experience or fun, but also the different sets of friends, different sets of great people that you can be around, okay? So in summary, we did it, 8 laps, something like that, at Demo Forest, a little bit of Aptos, so I didn't duplicate as much, and I did it. 7 hours and 10 minutes of riding time, and I learned so much that I'm here to share with you guys 5 of the things that I learned. So the number 1 thing I learned, so I actually finished 58 years old, and it's the best finish I ever did. 7 hours and 10 minutes, and not too hard. I could have gone more, but the days were short and the party was starting. The first lesson I learned is that you can get fit on an e-bike. You can maintain fitness, and we're talking elite levels for some people. And the way you do it is the discipline, the training is up to you. This thing will not force you. There's no failure. There's no pain and suffering required. So you have to be really self-motivated, and sometimes goals are good for that, or little adventures like this that are planned ahead of time. So definitely it is possible, and the one requirement I would say is you need an analog bike. To be good at the analog bike, you need one, and you need to ride it maybe once every 2 weeks, once a month, as a measuring stick, and to get you used to the pain of not being able to turn the pedals. That kind of pain, kind of like weightlifting, no pain, no gain. If you don't do it, you're not gonna get good at it. And a lot of mountain biking is like that, especially when you go to the to the limits of what your body can handle. You have to get there for you to be good at it, to get the growth. Endurance and spinning, these things are good at it, but for the actual push, muscle building and whatnot, you have to own an analog bike. All right, the second thing I learned was that these e-bikes have really improved my descending. They improved my descending, the technique, the cornering and whatnot, the fire road, the single track, because I've done so much of it, so much. When I went to a low travel bike, this bike was not as capable, but I was ready. My shoulders, my triceps were okay with it. So really, my descending was so focused and so safe. So definitely it helped there. Where it didn't help was the long rides. The long rides, 6 hours, 8 hours. I just sitting on a saddle for that long, being in the same position, it doesn't train you for that. So definitely I had to get my hours in, and do a lot of changing of position for that kind of situation. Also exercise my core a little bit for the back pain that you experience on an 8-hour, 10-hour ride. Third thing I learned was that drinking and nutrition is still key, very important on an epic adventure like this. You kind of forget the drinking and eating part on an e-bike because it's not required. When on the second hour, a lot of the rides are shorter, first of all, and when on the third hour when you're draining your battery, it's not that long. You're not doing a 6-hour ride. It's just rare to do that. The strength of this is in shorter rides, and you don't have to eat. When you just beelining to the car 10 miles away, you just put it on turbo. Notice how you start in eco and go on turbo. It's probably because you're getting weaker, but more so because you're getting hungrier and thirstier. So you don't eat as much. And so often I look at my water, go, I haven't drank yet, I should drink. But I really don't carry food anymore, and whatnot. But I got good advice from an endurance friend of mine, Julie, and she said, hey, 300 calories an hour from hour 1, and that's what's gonna get you through. It's like doping, she said. It's like having a battery when you have that much food. So I said, okay, I'm shoot for that, and I bought gels, I had an energy drink and everything, and man, it was like magic. It was really like a battery, and really, calories or watts come from a battery or from food. You have to get it from somewhere. So if you don't have a battery, you need a lot of food. That's kind of something I don't appreciate too much on an analog bike, is you do have to eat a lot. Gatorade at Amazon, and it's good for like basically 20 cents a bottle if you buy it in the powder in big cans. The number 4 thing I learned is that on e-bikes, the big equipment, the full face helmet, the knee pads and whatnot, the asagais, the big travel, you can get away with it, and you really should lean towards that. Don't go for the ground control when you can get an asagai, because you're just so much safer throughout the year. You never plan your rad ride or your bad crash, so just get the protection you need on these, and that's a big advantage of this. And so I always thought that, hey, cross-country bikes and trail bikes, they're the great big compromise. Every pound has a penalty, so you optimize. So it's a compromise, but in the other positive way of looking at it is just a balance. These things, you always weigh the balance between your the good chamois and the saddle, and the casing on the tire versus the rolling resistance. And in one sense it's a pain, but in another sense it's kind of the optimization. So I spent a lot of time on this thing and I really optimized it. What I came up with are is what you have right here. This ergon saddle, so cool. It's so soft, and it's not that heavy. And I did have these Specialized saddles, these new 3D saddles. They're so comfortable, but they were super short. And what I found was when it got really steep and I needed more seating positions when it got super steep, there's nowhere to sit. So Blur XC is a really good bike. Bird spokes from Atomic, super good, so comfortable on a low travel bike. PSI as well, it needs to be optimized. I found that 24, 22 was really good for me. S-Works tires, fast tracks, and ground control are so good. And they're so light. This thing is like 560 grams for the rear for a 29er, and that one's 610. So really good. So you get to understand all the weights. I also changed my front chainring. And finally, the last update I did on this bike is the bar ends. You know, bar ends have disappeared. They were all the rage when we were starting out like 30 years ago, and they all disappeared. But there's a reason for them to reappear, meaning they're not as big anymore, and they have so many curves and hand positions. This is from SQ Labs right here. And the last thing I'll say about equipment is brakes. Brakes is important, even when you have a short travel bike, because it allows you to have proper entry speed into the corners or into the rocks. You know, I thought this thing was sketchy. It's because it didn't have good brakes, meaning I would just go through at the wrong speed into corners. But all I did was I changed the front brake, all I had time for, to Dominion A4. It's heavier, but I was able to put a smaller rotor, and it is so good. It totally changed the bikes. So much more power and modulation. The last thing I learned is that there's fun on the e-bike, but there's also type 2 fun that are more advantageous on these kinds of bikes. Meaning type 2 fun, you know the term epic ride that you remember in your memory banks? They're really not that fun during the event. Like races, right? They're not that enjoyable. But when they're over, it's like they form the hardest, most memorable moments in your life, these epic rides. So type 2 fun might be considered fun when it's over. And they don't exist so much in this category, but they really exist in these adventures. And so, man, let me tell you, among the 80 people, 15 people finished, and 2 of them were kids, 16 years old and 18 years old, teenagers. And their dads were there with them. We were so proud. 15 people finished, but everyone else who didn't do the 10,000 feet, you know, did more than they ever did before. And 2 weeks later, we're still talking about what happened here. How, you know, every kind of twist and turn or obstacle that you encounter is etched in your memory, because that's kind of how life works. That's how your memory works. You know, when you have a very strong experience, traumatic or triumph, that's when you remember. And in the end, life's all about, you know, what you remember, right? Otherwise, it's all just a blur. So there is type 2 fun. There is the people that you bond with in this category is something you don't see here as much. So what is my solution? Have both. You know, have both. If you seek both. If you're good here, you're good. If you're good here, you're good. But if you can have both experiences, like myself, I love every BMX, dirt jump, and single speed. Everything I touch, I love. So I really discovered something, you know, playing with these bikes, and discovered something about myself. So I'm super jazzed. I'm entering the winter now, arriving in NorCal in a good state. So what about you guys? What do you remember most on your rides? Are you still looking at your analog bikes? Are you still looking at your big rides? Do you celebrate your big achievements on the E? Let me know what you have planned for you in 2024. And by the way, for E-MTB review, we're kind of in a hiatus right now. We're gonna do just a lot more testing. I'm gonna do a mid-powered shootout right in January and a full-powered shootout. Companies are now sending me bikes, not only commuters, but also these high-end e-bikes. We're a very legitimate source of information now for you guys. And I think a lot of you guys trust what I say about these new e-bikes and new technologies coming out. Thanks a ton.